So in this video, we have two co-presenters, Dr. Joan McClatchy and Mrs. Laurianne Campbell. Joan is a senior lecturer in Edinburgh Napier University's Business School and a senior fellow of the Higher Education Academy. Her research interests encompass tourism and pedagogy, and she's published in such areas as flexible learning, transnational collaboration, and inclusive curriculum. She was the project lead for the Embedding Equality and Diversity in the Curriculum project at Napier. Laurie is a research assistant in the Department of Learning, Teaching and Enhancement at Edinburgh Napier University. Her research interests encompass widening access, young people, social justice and poverty. She's currently writing up her PhD thesis, which examines the low participation of young people from deprived communities through the lens of a capability approach. And Laurie was the research lead for this project. So they're going to be presenting to us on their work for embedding equality and diversity in the curriculum, which followed a train the trainers model. You're going to hear Joan first, and I hand over to her now.
Hello and welcome to a video about our EEDC project. In this short video we'll tell you a bit more about what the project entailed. We'll explain to you the activities that were part of the project, which led to what we call reflective conversations. We'll analyse the impacts of these reflective conversations before looking at the lessons learned and what our next steps are going to be in order to continue the project. I'll now hand you over to Laurie to tell you a bit more about the project itself.
Okay, so the project is part of the Higher Education Academy's Strategic Enhancement Programme, which aims to develop and embed inequality and diversity in the curriculum standard. And we'll just be talking about the work that we've been doing at Napier. Our objective was to develop a train the trainers approach for staff at the institution to embed equality and diversity in curriculum design and delivery. This was to be rolled out across the university, and to achieve this, the project had the following aims. So we wanted to identify and disseminate areas of good practice, increase awareness of equality and diversity issues, and foster further collaborative learning between the academic and student community. Provide a springboard for further inclusive practices within the student experience. Provide skills and tools that can be used in the development, approval and reapproval of the curriculum, and to create an inclusive teaching and learning space which enables students to achieve their full potential. So we split the project into two parts. Firstly, we conducted a baseline analysis to get a better understanding of how staff at the university are embedding equality and diversity in curriculum design and delivery. We would then use this information to inform the development of the pilot study. And to ensure that we got a broad range of programmes on board, we took into consideration a specific selection criteria. So we considered programme levels. We wanted to ensure we had undergraduate as well as postgraduate courses on board. Methods of delivery, we looked at online courses as well as face-to-face courses, and course variation. So we tried to ensure that we get courses from across all the different schools at Edinburgh Napier University. We initially ended up with 6 programmes on board. However, one dropped out, leaving us with 5. Due to ethical issues, we can't discuss the names of any of the programmes that were on board in order to keep the participants anonymous. So for data collection, we employed mixed methods which allowed us to consider the visibility of equality and diversity, as well as deeper or more invisible forms of embedment. So the first stage looked at visibility, involved a desk-based review of materials that are publicly available on the Edinburgh Napier University website, along with course-specific documents. We also asked for access to some teaching materials, but this was there's not a good response to this, so we couldn't pursue that further. The materials that we did review consisted of module descriptors, programme specifications and course handbooks. We completed a mapping exercise which involved examining each of these documents for language related to equality and diversity. And the outcome of this would provide a snapshot of how visible equality and diversity was in materials that are readily available to students. We also conducted interviews with academics, student representatives and professional service staff, just to get a snapshot of how they see themselves as embedding equality and diversity in their curriculum design and delivery. The desk-based analysis revealed that EEDC is not reflected in module descriptors, learning outcomes or programme specifications, and that there is a real need for staff development and self-reflection as well as resources to address this gap. These initial findings were further supported by the staff and student interviews where we explored staff perceptions of their own practice in embedding equality and diversity in the curriculum. We discovered that there were many examples of good practice identified by participants which were not necessarily reflected in the formal programme or model documentation. These can be viewed in the appendices of the case study. We then used the findings from this baseline analysis to develop a series of reflective conversations which aim to train the trainers, that is, providing a learning opportunity where participants could then facilitate further embedding equality and diversity sessions based on their experiences throughout the sessions. Our sessions were also informed by the US-based SEEP model, which promotes change through self-reflection and interpersonal dialogue and builds capacity for a more equitable curriculum. We ran 6 sessions, however the case study is based on the first 3. I'll pass you over to Joan now, who will tell you a little bit more about the sessions.
So as Laurie said, we ran 3 sessions as the pilot itself, which were the first 3 on this list. And what we focused on in the first 3 was asking people to look inside themselves to reflect on their own beliefs and behaviours. And we started with the first session where we unpacked the terminology. We discussed what do these words mean, equality, diversity, the word curriculum as well, and looked at the language that was used in inclusivity and diversity. We then moved on to consider unconscious bias. We called that a session Check Your Privilege, and we had some wide-ranging discussions on what constituted privilege and how privilege may change over time. Our third session, the final part of the pilot, was looking at circles of the self, looking at the interactions and the links between different types of privilege and different types of discrimination and the various dimensions of identity that we all had. Once we had focused on our own self-reflection, the next 3 sessions were planned to focus on the institution itself. We considered institutional prejudice, stereotypical injustices, did they exist within the institution? We looked at the differences between equality and sameness. Were we eradicating inequality? How far had we come with that? And finally, we considered knowledge production and sharing ownership of learning. The reflective conversations had several impacts. The group dialogue style of them allowed the participants to consciously develop improved ways of working, allowed them to reflect on their own practices, on their own behaviours, and also to make that commitment to adapting their practice. Another impact of the pilot was the development of university-wide connections. Because the participants came from across the university, there was the development of an informal network across academic departments and professional services. This wasn't an intended or planned impact of the sessions, but was certainly a positive outcome, whereby people could identify others from across the university who were like-minded, who were interested in inclusivity issues. And another impact was the engagement of key influencers within the university. Key members of staff with responsibility for diversity and inclusion were appointed to the university whilst the pilot was in progress, and participated in the sessions, engaged with the sessions, and became advocates for what we were aiming to achieve through the pilot project. One of our main lessons learned and one of the limitations of our pilot was the lack of student representation, both within the baseline analysis and within the reflective conversations. And that needs to be addressed for future iterations to ensure that we are hearing the student voice and enabling students to provide their views and their ideas as well. The National Seed Project was a key enabler for us. We used their ideas, we were inspired by their ideas, and the colleague who was running the Seed Project at Sheffield was a huge help to us in developing our reflective conversations. These two links that I've provided on the PowerPoint, the first one is to the US-based National Seed Project. The second one is to the Sheffield version of it, both extremely useful sites for further information on what the project aims to achieve. And another lesson that we learned was that it was okay to be a facilitator, that the leader of the sessions was not required to be an expert, that it was not about directing people, it was about facilitating people to reflect on their own beliefs and behaviours. So, as I said, the pilot sessions had an inward focus on the individual practice of the participants, and the next 3 sessions aimed at using these reflective activities to look outwards, to look at the institution, to look at how practices could be changed within the institution, and the practicalities of embedding equality and diversity in the curriculum. The proposal is that the current participants will become facilitators in their turn, and in this way we plan to cascade the learning across the university. We recognise that additional training is required for these participants to enable them to do this. We also recognise that we were fortunate that we had people who were interested in the subject area and were advocates for inclusivity, and that as we cascade further out through the university there may be challenges ahead. We therefore require support from senior management to enable this process to take place, to provide the resources that are required for that to happen. We believe that an appropriate member of staff should undertake the SEED leadership training. And finally, we consider that we need further research in order to evaluate the long-term impact of this project.
Thank you, Joan and Laurie. And if you want to hear more about this project, then I do recommend you read the accompanying case study, which goes into a bit more depth with some of the findings in particular, and it will also give you some references to follow up. I'm sure as well that Joan and Laurie would be more than happy to be contacted to talk through this with you further, and their contact details are on the case study document. Thank you.